Welcome to my podcast on real relationships. My name is Sophie Passon, and I am a relationship expert, international speaker, and best-selling author of the book Your Other Half. I decided to start this podcast because, in my opinion, relationships are currently not being portrayed as what they really are. Whether you're watching the news, TV, or social media, the perception given to people is wrong. And my aim is to talk about what happens in the real world, talk about real stories, and listen to what real people think, do, or go through, as opposed to creating expectations of something that doesn't actually exist. I may not agree with everything that is said by my guests, but it is their chance to express their opinions and the stories. So here today we have Imani Khaliid, and we are going to talk about dating. Hi, how are you?
I'm very well. How about you?
Good, thank you. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Let's see. I am a LA native. Mm-hmm. Most of my professional career has been within the entertainment sector. I would consider myself an alternative kind of a guy. Like, right. Obviously I'm an African American, but like I feel like I'm not a guy that you can neatly put in that box, just, based on a wide range of interests, maybe not so popular opinions and principles on how things are. So I don't know. I would say, entertainment professional, divorce guy, very progressive. Mm-hmm. I think what I would like to see is a deeper level of evolution, socially speaking. And I think everything that I do and everything that I engage in is mapped to the end of making myself a better human being, mm-hmm. and doing what I can to help other people be better human beings. For, I guess the obvious benefit of that is having a more cohesive and stable society.
Yeah. And I guess in a dating sense, that doesn't necessarily make it easy to meet the right person either. So are you single out of choice, or is it just because you haven't met the right person, or both?
I would say that, well, I guess what it boils down to, I am single through my own personal choice. Mm-hmm. I feel like any fool can get married. Mm-mm-mm. Any fool can have a warm body next to them. But I believe, or one of the things I demand of myself is make every decision a decision that improves the quality of your life. And that's just really a derivative of something I took from an old high school coach for basketball. He said, move with a purpose. Only make a move if it's going to put you in a position to help us as a team. Mm-hmm. So, I take that alongside with having, I would say, very particular needs and being hyper aware of my own personal needs for the kind of mate that I have. And I'm single.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing about the purpose, because I think that there's so many people that actually just settle. They kind of start seeing somebody, they're all right. They're not, going to rock their world on fire or anything, but they're all right. So they just carry on this journey of plodding, as opposed to, I'm not saying that, everybody that does that is in the wrong relationship, but I sometimes feel that when I look at who splits up and who gets divorced or whatever, it is often the ones that didn't make the right choices because they just went along with it, as opposed to making an active choice.
Yeah, and I was one of those people when I first got married. And on paper, my ex-wife was stellar, but where I erred, what I suspect a lot of people is, I didn't address fundamental questions because I just didn't have the life experience. And it's like, dude, are we compatible? Is what you're doing sustainable?
Life vision.
Yeah, like, yes, what you have may be better than what your parents have, but what are the real implications? Like, what are your tools? What are your coping mechanisms like? What tools do you both have? And And because of that, man, like we fell into the 50% of people that get divorced.
Yeah. And do you think that kind of like has had an effect on moving forward with anybody else?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I liken it to a seasoned war veteran in combat. The incoming soldier doesn't have a concept of what battle or warfare looks like. And as a person who was married and divorced, I walked away from that experience grateful that I didn't have any kids, but also having a deeper understanding of who I was, and my needs were further amplified. So what was maybe criticized as being too picky by some people and too selective was really just me being hyper aware of some of the things that I needed and the pain and the financial devastation that can come from a failed marriage.
And I think, you see, I'm the first one to say that people's checklists should be binned, but it's mainly because their checklists are on things that are not about values, as opposed to what you're talking about, really.
Yeah. Yeah. The checklist is horseshit.
Yeah. In a nutshell.
Yeah. It's silly because, like, on one hand, I think the bottom line is a bottom line in how compatible you are with someone, but then you have to give your attention to the areas of a relationship that matters. And what matters, and not to run off a whole list, is how you engage with one another, how you resolve conflict, how you satisfy each other's sexual needs or emotional needs. There's a lot of key areas. I'm sure some social scientists have really documented thoroughly that people just overlook because they look at this other mate and go, oh, well, this person makes me feel a certain way, or this person is accomplished, or other people desire this person. But it's like, okay, well, you can be in a relationship with this person that looks good on paper, that ticks off all the boxes, but how does that serve you? And I know a lot of people who are divorced, who were married to lawyers, who were married to doctors and other professionals, who physically people consider an 8 or a 9, but it just didn't work out. And I think it's because people, the important elements in this were lost on them, or just something went afoul.
And I think sometimes it's just that they're not interested in certain things. Like, for instance, I like very deep conversations. A lot of people don't. But I know that I can't be mentally stimulated unless I have that. And I want to be challenged. I want my thoughts to be challenged, not because it's an argument, but because it's challenged and it makes me think deeper even more.
I think those are the things that add days to your life. And here's another way, when I say I'm like an alternative guy, is you hear a lot of, and I hear a lot of guys who a woman's appearance is number one. But this could be a woman who's not really flying at a high mental altitude, if you know what I mean. I mean, I don't want to be an asshole about it, but for me, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like, I like smart women. I like women. I like a woman who I can really connect with and engage at a very high emotional level. Are a lot of guys like that? I doubt it. But that's me being aware of who I am, because I know very soon I'll get bored with that person. And it's not a knock on the other person or a commentary about their intelligence. It's like, if we're not engaging outside of the bedroom on a deep level,
what's the point?
Well, yeah, it's like what happens with everything else. If I'm with another guy and we're just talking about sex, I'm going to get very bored with that. If I'm just talking with somebody who's a little bit one note and all they want to do is talk about sports, I'm going to get bored with that.
And I think this is the thing. This is also remembering that certain people, like I'm thinking of I don't know why it came to my head, but there's a couple I know that I met some 25 years ago, and they're both into family and very traditional roles. So she's into cooking and being mother hen, and he's into doing the DIY and being the typical dad, shall we say. And that works perfectly well for them and has evolved they've evolved in the same way because they were well suited. And I think sometimes it isn't just about, the deeper conversation. It's about finding someone suited to you. And that goes back to self-awareness, which unfortunately a lot of people don't have. I mean, sometimes when I work with one-to-one customers and I'll set them some tasks and they say to me, I never think about these things. I mean, I do on a daily basis, but most people don't. And actually even kind of need to at least once to know what they're about.
I suspect there's reasons for that, man. Like I think
one of the reasons we're not taught that at school. We're taught stuff that's very practical and like science, biology, history, whatever language country you're in, maths, physics, but things about emotions, things about, like in France, for instance, I use France because that's where I went to school up to 18. Philosophy, for instance, only starts when you're 17. It's only for 1 year, and then it's part of your A levels. But you never have it before, and you don't have it after, and it's only an hour a week anyway. So it's not, something that's really looked into. But actually, when I look back now, it's something I am into.
Yeah. I didn't learn about philosophy formally till I was 17 or 18 in college.
We're not taught psychology. We're not taught how to communicate. We're not taught any of this stuff.
It's a failure in education. It's a failure of education in certain educational systems, and it's a failure of education in the home. And one of the things I'm pleased with that turned out in my life was that I'm naturally curious. I'm naturally very analytical, and I'm very willing to look at what I call the ugly mirror. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that, I'll look at myself. I'll look at the bad things about me, the dark. I'll look at the darkness, and at a different, at whatever pace, I'll start addressing that. I'll start, correcting some bad behaviors and maybe some outdated thinking. It's not comfortable. It's
comfortable, but it's essential because, these bad things can be turned into good ones. It's what I call quirks. We all have them, but for instance, with me, I'm very stubborn, and it's not always a very good quality to have. In fact, it can be really a bad one to have, but that stubbornness makes me resilient. It's reframing, isn't it?
It's like a tool. Like I'm very stubborn too. And it's all about how you apply these attributes and knowing when to apply these. Okay, well, yeah, I mean, somebody's trying to mug you. Yeah, you got to be stubborn and resistant.
Yeah.
But okay, well then now you move that stubbornness into a different arena, like a romance. It's like, okay, it's a balancing act. And I like the analogy a composer had. He said, being a composer is like holding a canary in your hand. You squeeze it too tight, you crush it. You're too free-willing with it, it'll fly away. So with, our different attributes, like, being stubborn or whatever, man, it's just, you have to fail your way to mastering that particular attribute or character flaw.
So with all this in mind, how are you finding dating?
I find it continuously frustrating. I don't look forward to it. Mm-hmm. For, like there's two enemies always. There's me, and then there's women. And what pre-pandemic what was frustrating is man, like it's just not a pleasant experience. Like, just I find a lot of double standards, you know, not finding enough compatibility or qualities in a person that I think will mesh well with me long term.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you could say I'm a little traumatized
Mm-hmm.
with my divorce, which was a very long time ago. But overall, I just don't look forward to it, and I don't particularly enjoy it. And I like to use my powers for good versus evil. Like I don't have a forgiving, just the what's the word I'm looking for, when the regret or the guilt, like that's a younger version of me. Like I could do some things and be okay with it. The new version of me, I'll turn down sex if I don't think I want anything with that person, which I feel like is uncommon or not very common for men.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather have my own company than to just be on a big dating spree and just engaging many women and wasting their time. So just overall, it's just not something I particularly enjoy.
I think the thing is, it's probably the right attitude, because you're not just wasting their time, you're wasting yours. And I think sometimes people see dating as a numbers game. The more you see, the more you're likely to find the right person. But I think sometimes you have to be a bit selective, because you can burn yourself out. I mean, I know some people dating, it's like a full-time job. Honestly, if you remove the app, it's like you've cut off their arm. It really is. And that's fine. Well, it's not fine, because obviously it's not working for them either. But what I mean is that you have, at some point, if it's not working for you, you need to tweak something.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's that. And then another thing that comes to mind is again what I'm going to call my out of the box thinking. Like I say, well, one of my least favorite, or one of my phrases that women don't like is, "Hey, whatever makes sense." And what I mean by that, like, maybe marriage isn't the optimal level of engagement for us. Maybe what's good for you and I is being together but living apart, or some other kind of scenario. But a woman who's more of the mindset of, we date for a while, you get closer, you get engaged, and you get married, are resistant to the type of thinking and the type of principles or sensibilities that I may have. So that sometimes collide with women. And what makes it unpleasant is, typically women like really like me for various reasons. A lot of them say the same thing, but if they're seeking a direction that leads to marriage, and I'm saying, well, maybe marriage isn't the sweet spot for us, then bam, there's that collision, and then it kind of descends from there.
But do you think that for the right person, you would get married? If
Yeah, I'm open to
right
that.
people for both of you?
Yeah, but here's the thing, Sophie. Like I don't want to overvalue my intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
To know, like, right off the bat, like, oh, within 2 weeks or a month, this is the person. I'm not that smart. Like, I'm smart, but I'm not that smart. And I think romance is a lot more complicated than people think. But I mean, a short answer, like, yeah, if it makes sense, and we give each other, we're mutually a big source of enjoyment and pleasure for one another, and we enhance each other's lives. Like, yeah, if like, I'm not that stubborn where I'm going to go, no, I'm not going to marry you, or not make the proposition. But yeah, I'm absolutely open to it. I'm just, I guess I'm more, I take more in consideration other scenarios that could spell out to a happy relationship.
I think the thing is, forgetting marriage is not what this is about. But if you think about it, first of all, you've got to meet a person that, because let's be realistic, we're animals. So the first thing is lust. So you've got to like the look of them first. Then when they open the mouth, you've got to like what they say. And this is right at the beginning. You then, as the thing evolves, got to like want to get to know them more. Then you've got to actually develop feelings for them and them for you. You then have to be sexually compatible. And if you really take it down to the nitty gritty, you then have to be able to live together. And especially with age, you know, like each other's annoying habits that you've developed over time. So to find one person that fits this 50,000 like various steps is quite something when we really look about it and think about it.
Yeah, yeah. It's in a weird way.
The odds are against all of us.
The numbers and the science are there whether people want to acknowledge it or not. Like in a weird way, man, like whether you're a COVID denier or not, the science is still there.
Mm.
So with a relationship or with a long-term marriage, the tools that you need to maintain a healthy relationship are there whether you want to acknowledge it or not, or whether you accept it or not. And I'll add something to your list. The only way I would ever marry somebody is if I can trust my life with them.
Mm.
Like that's a huge one. But I don't know how much people talk about that. But yeah, like there's a list, man. And like I have to be with somebody who gets it, who conceptually understands what's at stake and what it takes to continuously build and sustain a romantic relationship.
Mm. And talking about being single and COVID, have you learned anything about yourself?
I
I think
have.
yes.
Yeah. COVID oddly plays to my strength of being a lone wolf in one regard, but it also brought into focus, man, as we get older, I feel like a shrinking inventory of potential mates,
Mm-hmm.
potentially. So what I've learned about myself is, like, in one sense, I'm pleased with how selective I've been. In another sense, what was brought back into my focus was my mortality. And why I say that is, like, generally I'm pretty healthy, but I had some inflammation in my left shoulder and I couldn't like work out, and it got it didn't get serious, but it got bad enough to where it affect quality of life. And I was just like, shit, man, like, put 10 or 20 years on this and you're still single. It's like, how are you going to do with that? So, I guess, maybe it reminded me of, some things I do good, but on the flip side, it reminded me that, there's duality in some of the decisions that I make that are good for me and that are bad for me. But I think the overall takeaway is it was overwhelmingly a reminder of, like, what, dude, some of the decisions that you've made up until this point in your life have been strong decisions because, you're not in financial peril. You're not living in a house with chaos. Your life hasn't been that negatively impacted, which, I kind of liken to an architect building a structurally sound dwelling. It's withstanding all the chaos.
And I think this is the thing, because when you look how many people that's single and in relationships that have been badly affected by COVID because of escapism, because in normal life, if they don't like what they see, they bury themselves in work or they go out with their friends or whatever it is. And all of a sudden, the work wasn't necessarily there. The friends were definitely not there because we couldn't go out. So all of a sudden, they're faced with that ugly stuff. They're faced with, I need to actually look at this properly this time. And a lot of the time it's highlighted what they were unhappy about and what actually really needed to change. And again, that's whether they were single or in a relationship.
Yeah. Well, I did an episode on this on my own podcast, and COVID, the COVID is a stress test. And I don't remember the numbers, but some relationships have resulted in divorce because people maybe found out that they were less compatible than they was thought, or maybe, the relationship was edging closer towards a cliff than they realized. And then people get divorces, and I've read some article where people were talking about affairs that were, I don't know if it's pandemic related or not, but yeah, it was a big stress test. And man, like I'm happy in one sense that I've been withstanding the stress test, but in another sense, I'm curious about how, what are going to be the long-term ramifications of just viral threats in general, and what does that mean for dating? Because I'm very risk averse with my health. So I'm wondering how I'm going to date people going forward.
Yeah. I get that. I completely get that. And I think that it also then gives a new measure of dating, in the sense of like, there's some that actually don't take any precautions whatsoever. And there's some that do.
I have a friend who, I'll leave the gender out of it, but they're sort of immunocompromised, and they're still dating. And I'm thinking, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? And so, like, with me, it's like, okay, well, if I'm amping that up a little bit, then, how's that going to be received?
Yeah.
Along with my other stuff.
But I think, there are ways. I've been talking to a variety of people, shall we say. So we've gone from the completely not careful whatsoever to the, right, well, what are we going to do? We're going to form a bubble, because in this country anyway, in the UK, you're allowed to have one person that you bubble up with for mental health reasons. So they've agreed not to see anybody for 2 weeks, and then to actually meet up and do the normal dating thing. And I'm not just saying having sex here, but even touching, kissing, that sort of stuff. And that's a commitment in itself, because they've committed to finding out about the person more. And I think that in certain ways, COVID has brought in some form of more traditional getting to know, as opposed to the too quick, too fast route.
I wonder about that. I mean, and I don't think unless you're doing it, you may not really know. And what worries me is the fatigue people have with the pandemic. I've heard quotes like, I'm tired of quarantining. I just want to live my life. And, if it's my time to go, it's my time to go. And that really diminishes my level of trust in some people. And I run into women that I've dated in the past, occasionally. Like, LA is huge, but it's also kind of small. But then people sort of casually talk about some of their behavior, and I'm like, okay, you're eating outdoors with, and you have this thin handkerchief over your face, and you think that's going to protect you? Like, that kind of feeds into my level of, I don't want to call it anxiety. Well, maybe it's anxiety, but it's also a bit of like, man, who can I, number one, like and date and come to an understanding or some level of trust where I can trust this person not to do something careless, and then I get infected, and then I infect one of my elders who I see every once in a while. So, there's like, I don't know, I feel like the more you know, the more prone you are to like depression, man.
Yeah, I think sometimes you can overthink it.
Yeah, I do that too.
Yeah.
I do that too.
Unfortunately, believe it or not, we're getting towards the end of our time together. So, what would be your final pearl of wisdom to anybody listening to this? And dating or thinking of dating or even wondering whether we're the right partner?
I would say commit to knowing yourself and commit to understanding the world better. And if you can do that and commit to that process, you'll continue to grow and you'll raise your value as a mate, but you'll also attract a more quality crop of potential mates.
Right, Imani, thank you so much. As always, been lovely talking to you.
You as well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And for everybody else, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, then please subscribe, leave us a review, but more importantly, come back for the next episode. Thank you.